You're standing at the kitchen counter, a jar of pickles in one hand. You twist. Nothing. You run it under hot water, tap the lid with a spoon, wrap it in a dish towel, and twist again until your face goes red. And you tell yourself it's just a stubborn lid, but it isn't. That jar is trying to tell you something, and for years I refused to listen. Here's what I finally figured out, and it stopped me cold. The strength in your hands is one of the most accurate predictors of how long you're going to live. Not your weight, not your cholesterol number on a sheet of paper. Your grip, and there's a 15-second thing you can do with your own two hands, starting tonight, that pushes back against the clock. This isn't some new gadget or supplement. This is old knowledge, the kind farmers and laborers and grandmothers carried in their bodies without ever naming it, back when hands did the work machines do now. I'm going to show you exactly what a team of researchers at McMaster University uncovered in a study printed in The Lancet in 2015, tracking almost 140,000 people across 17 countries. And I'm going to give you the 15-second method at the end that I now do every single morning while my coffee brews. I remember the exact moment it clicked for me. I was at my father's kitchen table, and he was 81 at the time, and he opened a jar of stubborn honey that I had just handed back to him in defeat. He barely grunted, and I sat there thinking, how does an 81-year-old man outgrip his own son? That question ate at me for months, and the answer changed how I take care of myself. You already have everything you need for this. No membership, no equipment, just the hands you were born with. Let me start with the thing that shook me the most, because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. For most of my life, I thought grip strength was just a party trick, something arm wrestlers cared about, something that didn't matter if you weren't lifting hay bales for a living. I was wrong, and the size of how wrong I was still bothers me. In 2015, a doctor named Darrell Leong and his team at McMaster University in Hamilton, Canada, published one of the largest studies of its kind. It was part of something called the PURE study, and they followed nearly 140,000 adults for years. They measured a lot of things about these people, but one measurement kept jumping out at them: grip strength. They used a simple device called a hand dynamometer, the kind you just squeeze as hard as you can. And here's the number that stopped me. For every 11 pounds of grip strength a person lost, their risk of dying from any cause over that period went up by about 16%. 16%. Their risk of dying from heart disease climbed too. A weak grip predicted heart trouble better than measuring blood pressure did in some cases. Let that sit for a second. A squeeze test at a kitchen table told the researchers more about a person's future than the blood pressure cuff that everybody worships. Now, why would that be? Because your hands don't lie. Your grip is a window into the total strength of your body, the health of your muscles, your nerves, even your heart. When your grip fades, it's usually the first visible sign that the whole system is slipping. It's the smoke, not the fire. And most of us never even notice the smoke until we're red-faced over a pickle jar. I used to think losing my grip was just part of getting older, something to shrug at. But the researchers found the opposite. They found that grip is something you can measure, watch, and actually push back on. It isn't a sentence handed down. It's a signal you can answer. And that raised a bigger question for me, one that kept me up at night. If my grip is that important, how did I let it get so weak in the first place? Because I didn't wake up one morning with feeble hands. Something took them from me slowly over years, and I never felt it happening. Here's what I found, and it made me a little angry at myself. Think about what your hands actually do in a normal day now. You press buttons. You tap a screen. You turn a key, maybe. You push a cart. That's about it. Now think about what a pair of hands did 100 years ago. They wrung out wet laundry by twisting it with everything they had. They pumped water. They kneaded stiff bread dough. They carried buckets, split wood, opened everything by hand because there was no other way. They gripped, squeezed, and pulled all day long without anyone ever calling it exercise. I dug into some old household manuals from the early 1900s, and it struck me how much raw handwork was baked into an ordinary day. Wringing out a single load of wash by hand took real grip endurance. Beating rugs, hauling coal, hand cranking everything from ice cream to the wringer on the wash tub. Nobody in 1890 needed a grip exercise. Their whole life was one. Then came the great convenience wave. The electric washer with a spin cycle, so no more ringing. The car with power steering, so no more muscle at the wheel. The jar with a lid, a machine sealed so tight that a normal human hand can barely break it. Every single one of these things was sold to us as a gift, and in many ways they were. I'm not telling you to go back to hauling water from a well, but nobody mentioned the quiet price. Every task a machine took over was a little deposit of strength we stopped making. And strength you don't use is strength you lose. Doctors even have a name for the muscle you lose as you age. They call it sarcopenia. And here's the part that got me. After about age 50, a person can lose 1 to 2% of their muscle every year if they do nothing to fight it. The muscles in your hands and forearms are right there in that decline. So it isn't that your grip mysteriously vanished. It's that the modern world quietly stopped asking your hands to work, and your hands, being efficient, gave up what you weren't using. I realized I had spent good money on a lifetime of conveniences that were, without me knowing it, making my body weaker. That stung. But it also lit a fire under me, because if convenience took my grip away slowly, then I could take it back the same way. A little at a time. On purpose. But here's where it got really interesting for me, and this is the part I did not see coming. It turns out that working your grip does something far beyond your hands. It reaches all the way to your heart and your blood pressure. I have had blood pressure that runs a little high for years. Nothing dramatic, but enough that every visit ends with that look from the nurse and a lecture about salt. I'd try to walk more, cut back on the bacon, and the numbers barely budged. So I was skeptical, deeply skeptical, when I read that squeezing your hand could lower blood pressure. It sounded like nonsense. It sounded like exactly the kind of too good to be true thing I'd learned to ignore. Then I found the research, and it was not a fringe claim at all. There's a whole category of exercise called isometric hand grip training. Isometric just means you're pushing or squeezing against something without moving, holding steady tension. Researchers had been studying this for decades. And in July of 2023, a team led by a scientist named Jamie O'Driscoll at Canterbury Christ Church University in England published a huge review in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. They pulled together 270 studies with almost 16,000 participants. They compared all the different ways to lower blood pressure through movement. Walking, running, cycling, weight training, all of it. And do you know which type came out on top for dropping blood pressure? Isometric exercise, holding steady tension, the kind of thing a simple hand grip does. People doing isometric work saw their top blood pressure number drop by around 8 or 9 points on average, and their bottom number dropped too, 8 or 9 points. That is territory that competes with what some people take a daily pill for. Why does squeezing your hand do that? Here's the plain version, the way I finally understood it. When you grip hard and hold it, you briefly squeeze down on the blood vessels in your arm. When you release, your body floods those vessels open again, and it does this over and over as you repeat the holds. Over time, that repeated squeeze and release trains the lining of your blood vessels to relax and open more easily. Your vessels get more flexible, and more flexible vessels mean lower pressure, the same way a stiff old garden hose fights the water while a supple one lets it flow. I read that, and I thought, I have been chasing this with diets and worry for years, and the answer might be sitting at the end of my own arm. So I decided to test it on myself, the way I test everything before I believe it. And that brings me to the part I promised. The part for anyone right now thinking, this sounds like work, or I'd have to go buy some special gripper. This isn't for me. Stay with me, because this next part I put together specifically for you. You do not need to buy a single thing. I want to be clear about that, because the moment something requires a purchase, I get suspicious too. Reach into your kitchen drawer or your linen closet and grab a hand towel. That's it. That ordinary towel is your equipment. Roll it up tight, lengthwise, until it's about the thickness of a broom handle. Now grab it in one hand and squeeze it as hard as you comfortably can. Not to the point of pain, just a firm, hard, honest squeeze, about as hard as you'd grip to open a truly stubborn jar. Hold that squeeze while you slowly count to 15. Breathe the whole time, don't hold your breath. Then let go completely and let your hand rest for a bit. Switch to the other hand and do the same. That's the 15-second grip tip in its simplest form, and you can do it sitting in your chair watching this right now. And that discovery is where this stops being about jars and starts being about your life. If you've been finding this kind of plain, practical knowledge useful, I want to mention that I've gone much deeper on all of it in my books, First Fix, Deep Fix, and Fix It All. They're the same kind of no-nonsense digging you're getting right now, pulled together in one place, written for people who'd rather understand how something works than be handed a product. You can find them linked in the description below. A lot of people have told me they keep one on the kitchen table, which feels about right for the kind of knowledge we're talking about. Now let me tell you how I stumbled onto this. I started with just that. One rolled towel, a few squeezes aside while I waited for my coffee to drip in the morning. No gym, no gadget, no excuse. And here's a small thing that surprised me in the first week. The wringing motion, the same thing our grandmothers did with wet laundry every single day, lit up muscles in my forearms I had honestly forgotten I owned. My hands felt tired in a good way. And within about 2 weeks, that pickle jar that used to defeat me, I opened it without a second thought. My wife noticed before I did. If you want a little more, take that same towel, get it wet, and wring it out like you're trying to squeeze it bone dry. Twist one way, then the other. That's a grip workout our great-grandparents did every wash day without ever calling it one. It costs nothing. It uses what you already own. And it's the exact kind of handwork the modern washing machine quietly took away from us. Now, I could have stopped there, and it would have been worth it. But I kept digging because I wanted to know the best way to do this, the exact recipe the researchers used to get those real blood pressure drops. And what I found, buried in the actual study protocols, is the thing I now consider the real secret. It's specific, it's proven, and almost nobody outside of these research papers knows it. So let me give it to you. Here's the part that felt like finding buried treasure. When I went into the actual isometric hand grip studies, the ones that produce those 8 and 9-point blood pressure drops, I expected some brutal hour-long routine. It's the opposite. The recipe is almost laughably small, and that's exactly why it works, because anyone can stick with it. The protocol they kept using went like this. You squeeze at a moderate level, only about 30% of your absolute hardest, so not white knuckle, just a firm, steady hold. You hold that squeeze for 2 minutes, then you rest for 1 minute, then you do it again with the other hand. 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, and you alternate hands until you've done 4 holds total, 2 per hand. That's about 12 minutes. And here's the kicker. You only need to do it 3 days a week, not even every day. 3 sessions a week, about 12 minutes each. That was the routine that, in study after study, brought people's blood pressure down by numbers that made doctors sit up. One of the researchers who pioneered this back in the early 2000s, a scientist named Phil Millar, who did a lot of this work in Canada, showed that even older adults with high blood pressure responded to this gentle, no-impact squeezing. No pounding joints. No sweating buckets, just holding tension, resting, and holding again. Now think about where this really comes from. This isn't new at all. What these scientists rediscovered in a lab with expensive equipment is the exact quality our ancestors built into their hands by accident, every single day, just by living. The dairy farmer who milked by hand at dawn was doing sustained, moderate grip holds, 2 minutes at a stretch, over and over. The washerwoman wringing sheets was doing it. The blacksmith, the seamstress squeezing shears, the man hauling and holding a full bucket steady as he walked, their bodies got the medicine for free, folded invisibly into their chores. We are the first generation in human history whose hands are allowed to go idle. And the researchers, without quite saying it this way, simply found the smallest possible dose of that old daily handwork and proved it still heals us. The knowledge never really disappeared. It was living in our grandparents' calluses. It just got mechanized out of our lives so gradually that we forgot our hands were ever meant to be strong. So here's how I do it now, and how you can, using nothing but that rolled towel. Squeeze it at a comfortable firm level, not maximum, and hold steady for 2 minutes. Rest 1 minute. Switch hands. Do that 4 times through, 3 days a week. If 2 minutes is too long at first, start shorter, 30 seconds, and build up. That's the whole thing. That is the routine hiding inside all those Lancet and British Journal studies, and it costs you nothing but a little patience. And the beauty of it is you can layer it into a life you already live. I do my holds during the commercial breaks of the evening news. I do them at the kitchen table before I've fully woken up. You can do them in the car in the parking lot before you go into an appointment. You never have to set aside special time, the same way our great-grandparents never set aside special time to be strong. It was just woven into the day. Let me tell you what changed for me, because I promised you my before and after, and I don't want to leave that out. Before, I was a man who couldn't open his own jars, whose blood pressure earned him a sigh from the nurse, who assumed weak hands were just the toll you pay for getting older. I felt, honestly, like my body was quietly slipping out of my control, one small surrender at a time. Every dropped jar lid, every request for help twisting something open, chipped away at me. After a few months of this ridiculous, simple towel squeezing, 3 days a week, 12 minutes at a pop, plus those 15-second holds whenever I thought of it, things shifted. The jars stopped winning. My grip came back so much that I'd catch myself opening things one-handed without thinking. And when I sat down for a checkup, the number on the cuff had come down enough that the nurse actually asked me what I'd changed. I told her squeezing a towel. She laughed. Then I told her about the research, and she stopped laughing and wrote it down. I want you to notice something about this whole story, because it's a pattern I've seen again and again once I started paying attention. The most powerful things for your health and your independence are almost never the expensive things. They're the old things. The things that got pushed aside not because they stopped working, but because nobody could sell them to you. There's no profit in telling a man to squeeze a towel he already owns. There's a lot of profit in every gadget, every membership, every product that promises what a rolled-up dish towel delivers for free. I'm not saying anyone sat in a room and plotted to hide this from you. It's simpler and sadder than that. This knowledge just wasn't worth anyone's advertising dollars, so it fell silent. The conveniences that weakened our hands were marketed to us relentlessly, year after year, and the free fix that rebuilds that strength never got a single commercial. That's how something this valuable ends up forgotten, while everybody's forearms slowly waste away. But you know it now, and knowing it puts you back in the driver's seat. Let me leave you with a few honest cautions, because I test everything and I won't oversell you. This isn't magic, and it isn't a replacement for your doctor. If you're on blood pressure medication, do not stop it because you started squeezing a towel. Keep taking what you take, keep your appointments, and mention this to your doctor so they can watch your numbers with you as they hopefully come down. And when you hold that firm squeeze, keep breathing nice and steady. Never hold your breath while you strain, especially if you have heart concerns, because holding your breath while bearing down can spike your pressure in the moment. Breathe through it, easy and slow, and let the tension live in your hand, not in your chest. Start light, start short. Let your hands tell you the pace. Some of the biggest, longest-lasting changes I've ever made in my life started this small, this quiet, this unglamorous. A rolled towel by the coffee pot, 15 seconds while the news plays. 2 minutes during a commercial. Nobody watching would even know you were doing something that reaches all the way down into how long you might live. I think about my father at that kitchen table, 81 years old, cracking open the honey jar I'd handed back to him in defeat. I used to think he was just built differently. Now I understand. He came up in a world that never let his hands go soft. He wrung the wash, hauled the buckets, gripped and pulled and held every day of his working life, and his body kept the strength because he kept using it. He didn't have a study to read. He had a life that trained him without asking. The rest of us have to do on purpose, in 12 minutes, 3 days a week, what his whole day did for him automatically. And now we can. Here's the truth I keep coming back to. Something was taken from your hands, quietly, over a lifetime of conveniences you were told to be grateful for. And the way to take it back was never sold to you, because it was free the whole time, sitting in the muscle memory of the people who raised you. If you're the kind of person who trusts a plain, sensible answer over a shiny, expensive one, who'd rather build strength with a towel than rent it from a store, then this is exactly the kind of forgotten, practical knowledge you and I are in the business of digging back up. That's who we are. People who'd rather know how something works than be sold a product that promises to do it for us. So let me ask you one thing, and I really do want your answer. Grab a towel or a jar or just your own fist right now, give it a hard 15-second squeeze, and tell me in the comments how it felt. Was your hand weaker than you expected? Stronger? And did that stubborn pickle jar come to mind the second I mentioned it? Leave a comment and tell me. I read them, and I want to hear which of you already knew about this old wash day strength and which of you are as surprised as I was. Tell me where you're watching from too, because I love seeing how far this old knowledge travels. If any of this hit home, come join the rest of us who are quietly recovering the practical, self-reliant knowledge the modern world lets slip away. That's what this whole thing is. A bunch of ordinary people refusing to forget what our grandparents knew in their bones. And next time, I'm going to show you something just as overlooked, a forgotten trick for keeping your balance steady and your legs strong as you age, using nothing but a kitchen chair and about 60 seconds a day, the kind of thing that quietly keeps a person on their own 2 feet and out of a nursing home for years longer. You won't want to miss it. Squeeze that towel. I'll see you in the next one. You made it all the way through. Thank you. If you'd like, stay with me a little longer. Inside the Old Ways Almanac, I pick up right where we just left off. You can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be alone. You belong here with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, and you can cancel anytime,